Hello, magical experimenters. Taylor Ellwood here. I've got a little bit of a cold, so my voice may not be as loud as usual. Tonight we're going to talk about Money and Magic Part 2, where I'm kind of continuing the series on wealth magic and its role in your life and in finances and all that fun stuff. And of course, I'm just going to, of course, mention my book, Manifesting Wealth, which I do have a link in the video. So, if you're watching this and you're thinking, wow, I want to learn more about Taylor's philosophy and approach to wealth magic, well, there you go. Check that book out. I do plan on writing another book at some point because a lot has changed since I wrote that book. Actually, a few books, really. But right now, that's the book I've got, at least on that particular topic. All right, so tonight we were going to talk about manifesting wealth in further detail and wealth magic. And I think I'm going to start this discussion off with an observation that someone made. He said, he saw my video and he said, it brings up an interesting question. There are a lot of people who are very wealthy. Did they use wealth magic to manifest that wealth? Did they, is wealth magic essential to acquiring wealth? And the answer to that question is no. Wealth magic is not essential to acquiring wealth. Now you might be like, wow, Taylor, that's harsh. I mean, here you are talking about using wealth magic, but you're saying it's not essential. Well, it's not. I mean, not everyone who is wealthy practices magic, or if they do, they keep it under they keep it very tight to their chest. I mean, maybe they do, and we just don't know. But I don't think I don't think that if you practice magic that you necessarily have the same amount of time to go about focusing on wealth that they do. Because the key word here is focus, people. Those people who are super wealthy, like we'll just say Jeff Bezos as an example, right? The guy at Amazon. Or, Steve Jobs or any of those other people. Here's what they have. And this is what's essential. They have a few key things. They have an incredible amount of focus on just acquiring wealth, right? They're the wealthiest people in the world are people who run businesses, and they are focused on their businesses, and they spend most of their time at their businesses. I can guarantee you that people who practice magic don't want to put that much time toward a business for the most part, unless they're like me and they like running a business. I love running businesses. And I like entrepreneurship and all that other stuff. I'm weird like that, but not everyone else necessarily goes for that. Even a lot of the occult authors I know work day jobs. I work a day job right now, but I'm working my way out of that job. But they have focus. They know what they want. And if you'll recall from the previous video, I talked about that very important thing. You have to know what you want, and you have to be willing to go for it. Now, what you want doesn't necessarily have to be about acquiring lots and lots of money, okay? You don't have to be like Jeff Bezos and want to run a business and be one of the richest people in the world. But you just have to know what you want. And he knew what he wanted. He wanted to start a business up because he saw a gap in there and he saw a way to make that work. It's the same thing with Steve Jobs. It's the same thing with any of these people who are who are fairly rich. They saw a gap, and they made that their passion, and that's the thing they pursued. You don't need wealth magic for that. You need focus, you need discipline, you need systems, you need processes. Those are the things that you need to succeed when it comes to that. So it does bring up the interesting question. Well, then what's the point of wealth magic, Taylor? I mean, here you are saying this, and so what you're really telling me is I just need an incredible amount of focus. I need to find a gap in something and be able to come up with some idea or whatever. And I need to go out there and run a business, and I'll become really wealthy. Well, yeah, there is that. And people will succeed. People can and do succeed, but there are a lot of people who also fail. They fail at running businesses. In fact, if you look at any wealthy person, they will have stories of failure in their lives, things that they did where they messed up. And on the surface, they'll seem like they were an overnight success, and that's not the case. I was reading an article the other day about how Jeff Bezos, again, I'm going to use him as an example. He was talking to one of his people, one of his employees, and he said, we should use knee pads. This was in the day when they first started out the Amazon business. We should use knee pads because they were shipping the packages themselves, okay? And the guy looked at him like he was an idiot and said, no, we should get packing tables. And that was a smart idea. It doubled their productivity. That didn't come from Jeff. It came from this other person. And so here's another thing that makes somebody truly successful at wealth is they surround themselves with smarter people. They surround themselves with people who understand what's necessary to succeed, and they learn from them. But they also know how to direct and guide them. They know how to be a leader. Okay? So when you factor all of that in, yet you don't necessarily need wealth magic to become wealthy. In fact, I don't see wealth magic as actually essential to acquiring wealth if you want to go down that route. But note that I put a qualifier in there. I said if you want to go down that route. Not everyone wants to. And it really boils down to this. It matters as to what kind of lifestyle you want. I've been down the route of owning a business. I can tell you that when you own a business, you work more hours than you ever work at a daytime job. I mean, right now, peak season at the call center that I work at, I'm maybe going to end up working like, I don't know, close to 50 hours this week. And one of the nice things about working at that job is that I normally only work 40 hours a week at most. I don't work more than that. I don't want to work more than that for somebody else because my time's precious. But when you're self-employed, you are working all the time. And I can tell you that I worked 80, 90, 100-hour weeks when I was self-employed. I loved it, but it didn't leave a lot of time for other things. And there were things that I learned. I mean, I mean, throughout that process, you spent a lot of time putting time into the thing. And you might say, well, why not apply wealth magic to that? And here's the problem. People think of wealth magic as cutting corners when they approach it that way. And yeah, I mean, you can cut corners, right? But cutting corners is not the most optimal use of wealth magic. The optimal use of wealth magic is the use of wealth magic to enhance what you are already doing well and to discover what you're not doing well and to get the right things in place. And again, some of that isn't just magic. Some of that really just comes down to knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. Read any book on business out there, and they'll basically tell you that. Where wealth magic comes into play is it comes into play for people who don't necessarily want to spend all their time focused on making lots and lots of money, but they do want to spend their time focused on what's important to them. And they see wealth magic as a means to complement and enhance their lifestyle and enable that. That's where wealth magic comes into play when it's done right. And what wealth magic should be used for in such a context is it should be used for a couple things. First, for that focus, like what do I really want? What do I need? And answering that question with how am I going to go about getting it? If I don't want to run a business all the time, if I don't want to come up with a unique idea, I have to come up with some other way to get where I want to go. And some of that may involve applying wealth magic to your circumstances. So then the question comes down to that, okay, Taylor, how do we use wealth magic in those circumstances? And again, I'm going to remind you that my definition of wealth magic is different from most every other person's out there. Big surprise, because let's be honest here, I'm just outside the box, okay? I'm an outlier when it comes to the magical world. That's all there is to it. I don't fit in anywhere, and that's all there is. Now, getting back to the matter at hand. How do we apply wealth magic to acquiring what we want? Well, first, we recognize that we look at the entire picture. We don't just look at money. We look at health. We look at our lifestyle choices. What is it we really want? I want some more health right now, obviously. Now I've actually applied some magic toward that. I'll be writing about it. I'm mostly out of this cold. But we we look at it in that way, and we focus it. So my example of wealth magic, as a practical example of this, is that right now I have a couple different wealth magic workings happening in my life. I have one that is designed to enhance the ads I run on Amazon, and basically to draw more people in and get their attention and make them aware of me and want to buy my books, because that's one of the ways I'm making money. I have another that is designed to help me with my career at my call center. I don't know if I really call it a career, but to help me out with the job, not only to make me stand out in a positive way, um, and also at the same time to actually help me to kind of do some of the stuff that I want to do, like my writing, under the radar while I'm at work, which I do a fair amount of. It's one of my secrets for getting a lot of the writing done I'm getting done right now. There's little spurts of time where I'm in between calls, I'm writing away. But I don't necessarily want, work to notice that. So that's another key aspect of that wealth magic. But another, help me stand out in the right way, and at the same time, help me not stand out in other ways. But then there's also the aspect of I need to hit certain metrics at work, and one of those is sales leads. I need to get so many leads at my job, and I do that. I mean, I use wealth magic for that purpose, to help enhance those moments where I recognize, this person needs this service or product, and at the same time to not just create that opportunity, but very much to help enhance my persuasiveness in the matter. Basically talk them into at least being open to hearing back from someone, about this opportunity to buy a class or whatever from the company that I'm working at. And really that's twofold there, because the leads that I get, I have two different ways that I convert those into wealth. I don't get like a percentage or anything on it, but I do get this thing called Star Points, which is part of the company reward program. And with those Star Points, I use that I can actually use that to get things that I want. For example, I used it to get a $500 Amazon gift card, and then spent all of that on myself. That was fun. So that's another form of wealth right there, because it's not necessarily monetary. It's exchanged for reward points that I can use to get things. But, it's a good example of applying wealth magic to enhance my overall lifestyle, because getting that, for example, allowed me to shave a significant amount of money off of what Christmas would have cost this year. It allowed me to get gifts for people without spending money. So wealth, this is a good example of wealth magic being used proactively, because what I'm doing is I'm thinking out, like, what can I do to enhance my overall lifestyle? The other approach that I take with wealth magic is that, and this is again a departure from what I see for the most part, because most wealth magic is focused on money, 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 or things along that line, is I use wealth magic to open up doors for me, to get opportunities for myself. And what I mean by that is that I have set wealth magic workings up where basically opportunities come my way, and I'm much more aware of those opportunities than I might be otherwise, and then I can take advantage of them. One of the very first magical entity I created is a good example of wealth magic, because this entity was created to make me aware of opportunities, not to act on them, but to make me aware of them. And I found ever since I created that entity that I ended up finding that I had a much higher awareness of opportunities. A lot more things came my way, or more importantly, I became more aware of them, and I took advantage of them, because I recognized that it was very easy to lose track of the things that you're not aware of, because you don't even know about them. And so by being made aware of it, then you can choose what you're going to act upon. And that has changed my life in a lot of different ways. So when it comes down to wealth magic, it really comes right down to having a plan. If you're going to go and do wealth magic for the purposes of changing your life, you have to have a plan. And that plan does need to factor in what you're going to do on the mundane level, okay? if you're doing wealth magic and you just expect the magic alone to bring you wealth, well, I have news for you, sunshine. I'm gonna piss on your rainbow here in a moment and tell you it's not gonna work. Okay, you're not gonna you're not going to just suddenly have a whole bunch of money drop into your lap unless maybe someone in your life dies, and then you got to sit with that and live with that. By the way, and let me tell you, that's not something you want to sit with or live with, because there's no amount of money in your life that can be worth the cost of a human life. I know it sounds very, but it's true, especially when it's the human life of somebody you know. Um, the fact of the matter is, you have to have a plan, and really, that's one thing that if you look at all those people that are wealthy, they all had plans. The only difference with wealth magic and those people is two things. One, you're not necessarily as focused as they are on making money. You wanna live a certain lifestyle. You want to live a certain way. That's what you're using wealth magic for. I mean, that's what I see with most people who are doing wealth magic, quite frankly. They're not doing it to become rich. They're doing it to make their life easier, maybe to pay some bills off or whatever else. I think they need to be more long term. Like, what do I really want out of my life? But that's what it is. The other thing is that you're basically, with wealth magic, you are ultimately designing your life. And I'm a person who's a huge believer in life design, because and you might see that with like my latest book, Magic by Design, which is all about teaching people how to design magical workings. I've really started looking and examining the principles of design as it applies even to like building design, and how they design buildings, and applying it to life. Because when you understand how to design your life and how to structure your life certain ways, it makes your life much easier to live. You're much more proactive. And when something comes your way, a curveball, you're able to respond to it better. And that, to my mind, is part of what magic ought to be used for. Most people react to things that come their way. But if we're designing our life, we already anticipate that things will come our way. We may not know what all of those things are, but if we build that anticipation into our lives and we plan for it, that we know that something could come our way, we can adjust to it much more easily. We can adjust the situation and adapt it in our favor, which is one of the principles that I live my life by: adjust and adapt. Okay, you don't control over everything. You might want to, but you don't. None of us do. But you can adjust to anything that comes your way, and you can adapt yourself to those circumstances. And you can draw upon some resources, spiritual resources. You can work with wealth entities and things like that. That's another factor that really needs to be considered. You can work with wealth entities to enhance your life. You can work with like Ganesh, for example, who's the breaker of boundaries, or you can work with other spirits and see how they can help you with your life. You could like work with Hermes, for example, as like a merchant god or whatever else. But again, you also have to really consider with that, like, what is it you really want? What are you willing to give them? What are you willing to do in return? And I'll give you an example. I worked with the goetic demon Bune, and overall it was a good relationship. One of the ways I worked with him is that I asked him to help inspire me in terms of business ideas. And that's what actually inspired me to do some things with magical experiments that I'd never done. Before I worked with Bune, I treated magical experiments as just kind of like this blog with, me writing books. And then I started changing my mindset, and I tried some things out. Not all of it worked, but some of it did. And I'm still continuing to try things. That fundamental change came about because of Bune. But I'll also say that my work with Bune was mixed. I mean, I ultimately opted not to work with him any further at a certain point, because things just went so sideways in my life. And part of it was because I went down this path that he'd said, oh, you should check this out. I did check it out. And boy, I won't say that it hasn't proven useful ultimately, because it is actually proving useful. I just had to learn some things the hard way. And maybe And maybe in all fairness, I should say, like really ultimately, I can't hold Boone responsible. I'm responsible. It's my choices in the end. But it made me realize that I needed to be a bit more careful. And so I stepped back from working with him and made some different choices. And I would say now that my approach to wealth magic is also just much more structured and cautious and careful, because it is all about this plan and achieving very specific outcomes, as opposed to just going out there and taking a risk on stuff. It's very much more of a calculated risk. And it's really about adapting existing resources in order to get more out of them. And ultimately, my approach to wealth magic is really informed by time, because I can never get the time back. And so my focus is really on what's the optimal way to get the most use out of my time. And what can I do to really make that time something of a contribution to my community? Because what's important to me is all of you. My magical community is what matters to me, not really anything else, honestly, other than, well, my family, of course, and the writing and magic itself. But you guys are important to me, because my work with you and sharing my work with you is how we will change magic, how we will evolve magic. And that to me is the highest form of wealth right there, is pursuing what I really care about and following my passion. All right, so that's it for tonight. And hopefully that answered some more questions and gave you guys some further thoughts about wealth magic. All right, take care and see you next week.